Okay, so welcome everybody. It's great to see you all here. And today we're going to talk about our project around improving physical activity for autistic adults through dance. So just to acknowledge the team, and today we have Christine Rowland, Stephanie Tierney and Emily Corsellis on the call with us. And we'd like to thank the funder, the Three Schools Mental Health Programme, for funding this project. So today we'll talk through three parts of the research that we've done, and we'll show you the three films that we've created. So one film after each of the sections, and then there'll be time for questions and answers after we've done the three presentations and shown the films. And you should have seen in the chat that there's a link to a Padlet there. So we'd be really grateful for any feedback that you'd like to provide about any of the research findings or the films. And if you have questions for the research team afterwards, please put those in the Zoom chat. Okay, so part one, I'm going to talk about, I'll give an overview of the project and talk through the community involvement aspects. So for the project as a whole, the aim was to support engagement in physical activity through recreational dance and improve physical and mental health amongst autistic adults. And we conducted 3 studies and developed resources. Study 1 was an online survey, and Study 2 involved qualitative interviews. And the aim was to explore how autistic adults experience dance in different settings, at home, socially, and at dance classes. And this included the benefits, the barriers, and the facilitators to dance. We then developed resources, films, and written materials. And we took these to focus groups to see if the resources are usable and acceptable to link workers, dance providers, and autistic adults. We then refined the resources based on the feedback we received. So the films that we'll share with you tonight are the final refined versions. There was community involvement throughout the project, and this helped to shape the funding application with input from an autistic PPI co-applicant, Emily Corsellis, and others. And once we were awarded the funding, we set up 2 stakeholder groups, one with 5 autistic project advisors and another with 12 people in relevant professional roles, some of whom were autistic. And our project advisors and stakeholders helped us to shape the studies by providing feedback on the study adverts, the information sheets, and the questions that we were planning to ask people. And we also pilot tested the survey with 15 autistic adults. So we collated feedback from people and then we made some changes. We launched the survey on social media, and we were really pleased to see this comment from somebody on Blue Sky. And they said, "Finally, a survey where my answers don't skew the data. All surveys need to be made by autistic people. I didn't get mad at any point because I could explain my answers and context. And the questions had context for all." So we don't know who this person is, but we really appreciate them leaving this feedback because it validates all the work that the project advisors and the pilot testers and the research team did in trying to format the survey in an accessible way. We had community involvement in shaping the resources. So the films and written materials that we developed were informed by the research findings and stakeholder views. And the brilliant autistic filmmaker Sophie Broadgate created 3 short films, and these featured autistic individuals dancing and being interviewed about their experiences. So in summary, the community involvement enriched the project. It helped make the project and its outputs more meaningful and relevant to the people whom it concerns. And it's been a really enjoyable process. So we've really enjoyed working with everybody who's been involved. So now I'm delighted to be able to share the first film from the project. This is about what it's like to be autistic, so sharing general autistic experiences. And the film is for autistic adults to show similar or different experiences to support people learning about themselves, and it can also be a resource to share with others. And it's also for link workers and dance providers to help increase awareness about autistic experiences and needs. And it could also be useful for other primary care staff and professionals working in different areas.
To me, autism is everything that makes me unique, my perspective on the world.
I think we all have different flavours of autism, and I think mine carries an attention to detail and a functionality element to it. So I'm very happy doing routine tasks that are clearly delineated, and then I can work out a method in which to carry those tasks out, and I'm all over it.
I love the quirks, I guess.
I feel things very strongly and tend to notice things that others might not.
Because I'm sensitive to everything, like I'm very sensory sensitive, so like I notice like every sound, smell, everything. When I listen to music and things, I hear every single part of the song, and I see like every single part of a drawing, or I notice things that people don't.
I love myself. I love autism.
Before I knew I was autistic, I was describing it to a friend of mine as saying, I feel like I'm an alien on this planet, and I'm at threat of being killed if they find out, because I don't fit in, I don't know how this world works, I don't understand the rules.
Where should I begin? I have a lot of challenges really in my life. Some of them are like executive function things, you know, not being able to do things like neurotypical people can, you know, remembering to which order things go, you know, like if you're doing the washing, for example, right, put the clothes in the washer, put the stuff in the machine, like those things I find very, very difficult.
The subtext, the you should have known that, you just pick things up. No, I don't, you need to tell me.
I guess it sometimes leaves me feeling like a bit misunderstood and a bit like I can't really get my point across with people if they don't know me.
Sometimes my face might not be showing what I'm feeling, so people think that I'm not interested in what they're saying. Also, in moments when I'm overwhelmed, my voice can become quite blunt.
For me, like, just being out in the world, there's a lot of sensory stuff that I just, really struggle with. Something I kind of face every day, just getting out of the house sometimes. I have a real aversion to food textures, so eating the same things again and again, the same meals, because it just feels safe for me to do that.
I've got the misophonia thing, so anyone eating, I'm all right with crunch, but not with squish. So any kind of squishy thing happening, I need to have background sound to mask that, because otherwise I can't be in the room.
Feeling things so strongly can be tiring, and sometimes I feel overwhelmed by it all. And this feeling of being overwhelmed is a really physical feeling as well. I feel unwell in my body, and like I can't take in any more sensory information.
Like a lot of autistic people, I really love the sensory feeling of being in the water. I've been able to move freely anyway, but definitely like cold water, outdoor, swimming.
I understand how water moves. I understand how to move in water. That's always been in me since a kid. That feels like home.
When I'm in my zone with my special interests, I just feel so at peace. Reading everything, especially research. Another one of my special interests is dancing, like moving. I find it just the most amazing experience, really. Allows me to connect with myself.
I love the feeling of like movement and spinning and swaying, and that's something that really calms me.
So I became very locked into airlines and aircraft, and I used to live near the airport, and after we moved away I recognised how much time I was spending looking out the window at the aircraft coming in on final approach to Manchester, and also going on flight radar to find out what airline it was, where it had come from, where it might be going. It feels like I'm stealing some sweets or something. It feels like a little secret treat, like, oh, I know where you're going, and I know what aircraft you are, and I know what your tail looks like.
When I'm doing something I love, I'm exploding with joy. I love art, and I love that it's an emotional language and it connects people and starts brand new conversations. I just think it is the best thing in the world. Everyone has their own experience of autism. We're all different.
There's a pick and mix of different traits, but there's no rhyme or reason to it. I love that.
So that was the first film, and now Claire Planet is going to share some of the selected research findings from the project.
Thank you, Kelly. So in this section, I'm going to give some brief background to the research. I'm going to recap on the aim, describe the methods, talk a bit about who took part in the studies, and then present some selected findings as we're still in the middle of analysis. Okay, so in terms of background, physical activity is beneficial for physical and mental health, and we know that from research that has been conducted. We also know from research that autistic adults participate in physical activity less frequently than non-autistic adults and view it less favourably. But the interesting thing about dance is that it can provide similar benefits to other types of physical activity. It's non-competitive unless you're seeking out competitive dance, and it can be done with few resources. So you don't need expensive equipment or clothing, for example, if you're dancing at home. Okay, so I'm going to talk a bit about studies 1 and 2. So just to recap, the aim of these studies was to explore how autistic adults experience dance in different settings, so at home, socially, and at dance classes. And in terms of the methods, the online survey was designed and distributed via Qualtrics, which is an online software platform. It was comprised of open and closed questions. So open questions where participants had the option to give as much detail or as little detail as they wanted, and closed questions where there were predefined response options for people to select. We also included the Gold DSI questionnaire, which is a validated questionnaire which asks people about their experience of dance as well as their experience of watching dance. However, this particular questionnaire hasn't been tested specifically in autistic populations, so we've been collecting feedback on the questionnaire, which will be helpful for future research in this area going forward. The survey was open for a period of 3 months, and we advertised it via social media platforms, local autistic groups and networks, and we're analysing the data using descriptive summary statistics, and the open text responses are being analysed using something called reflexive thematic analysis, which essentially means looking for patterns and themes across the data. In terms of the interviews, these were semi-structured, so what that means is everyone was asked the same questions, but there is flexibility for us to explore different areas as they may have come up. Interview participants were invited to bring any objects, music or images to the interview if that would help them to describe their experience of dance, and about half of the participants did that. The study was open from October 2025 until February 2026, so 4 months, and again was advertised on social media platforms through local groups and networks, and we're analysing that data again thematically. Okay, so in terms of who took part in the study, for the survey we had 122 participants. The mean age was 41. About a quarter said they were non-speaking sometimes. 23 out of the 122 said they had a learning disability, and 68, so just over 50%, said they had health conditions impacting ability to dance. We had diversity in terms of gender identity and sexual orientation, consistent with the autistic population. There was less diversity in terms of ethnicity and education, so the majority of people taking part in the survey were white and degree educated. So we have to be mindful of that in our analysis and in terms of thinking about future research. In terms of ADHD status, 68% were definitely or likely ADHD, and that is consistent with current estimates from research, which suggest about 70% of autistic adults are ADHD. So in terms of who took part in study 2, the interview study, we had 16 participants with a mean age of 41, and 5 of the 16 said they were non-speaking sometimes. Again, we had diversity in terms of gender and sexual orientation, but again, less diversity in terms of ethnicity and education. In terms of ADHD status, very similar to the survey, 69% said they were definitely or likely ADHD. Okay, so in terms of findings from the survey and how many participants dance, our survey found that about 2.5% had never danced, 97.5% said they had danced at some point, and 45.9% are currently dancing, and then 71.3% said they had attended a dance class at some point. And in terms of the classes that participants most commonly reported attending, these were ballet, interpretive and contemporary, and theatre jazz. And that's not surprising given that those are the types of classes that people tend to do in childhood. So we weren't too surprised by that. Okay, so we asked people why they danced, and I'm going to read out some quotes from our participants. So on the left-hand side, I used to dance to express myself and socialise mostly, sometimes to let go of excess energy and frustrations. Top right, the urge to stim and get lost in music, like the audio euphoria can't be contained. And then bottom right, for emotional regulation, excitement, sad or angry, to connect my brain and body so they learn to communicate together, for mindfulness. Another participant said, I have cognitive alexithymia, meaning that I can struggle to put words to my emotions. Closing my eyes and dancing to particular genres of music helps me figure out what emotions I'm feeling. If I want to listen to jungle or hardcore and start stomping around, I will understand that I'm angry. If I want to listen to piano house and start jumping and swinging around, I will understand that I'm feeling joyful. And the last quote on this slide, I enjoy rehearsing as movement and learning choreography means I do not need to speak to people much, and we are all focused on achieving the same thing. I love to learn the routines, the repetitive nature of dance, and sharing this with others. So from both studies 1 and 2, we also have a lot of data around what can make dance challenging, and there's too much to present in this session today, so I'm just going to focus on 3 areas. So one of the areas was sensory differences. So people talked about challenges in terms of lighting, in terms of sound levels, in terms of smell and the ventilation of rooms and spaces that people are in, and then also touch. So that might be the touch of other people in social settings like clubs and festivals, or touch in terms of partner dancing in more formal classes. People also talked about challenges in terms of information processing styles. So some people feeling that they need or want a bit more time to process the environment and feel comfortable in it. And then also perhaps needing more time in terms of understanding instructions or choreography. And then people talked a lot about practicalities and the challenges associated with that. So for example, do people have space to dance at home? Do people have access to local affordable classes? Do people have time, for example, if they have caring responsibilities or they're busy with working and studying? So these are some of the issues that can make dance challenging. And then also people talked about physical health conditions and how that can impact their ability to dance. For example, having Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, POTS, those kind of conditions that can make dance challenging. People also talked about physical and psychological safety, so describing the importance of having agency and control over the sensory environment, particularly in relation to dancing in their own space. Also being accepted by themselves and others, so that might be regarding body size, dance ability, or other disabilities. And having access to safe spaces and people that are free from harassment and judgment, whether that's other people in social settings like clubs or dance classes, and also how the teacher creates a safe space for everybody. We asked people who took part in the interviews, what do you want other autistic people to know about dance? So I'm just going to read out a couple of quotes. So, quote on the left, "You can dance by yourself in your house and no one has to see, and no one really has to know. I think you can find a love for it that way. You can feel really silly and maybe you'd hate it, but there's minimal risks." Quote on the right, "That it can be for everybody and it can be really beneficial, and that being autistic isn't a barrier to doing it. That if you want to give it a go, it might seem really scary, and it's always scary to get across the threshold of anything. That's just the way the world is. But if you can do that, if you can take that step, that there is actually a huge amount of benefit from it, and that it can be a really empowering experience if you think it's for you." And I think to summarise the responses to that question, people were saying, try it in a low risk environment. So that may be at home, that may be watching free online YouTube dance classes, because it can be beneficial and a lot of fun. And then some people also mentioned how it's really good for helping to get things done. So things like housework and chores and things that might otherwise be a bit boring. We also asked interview participants, what do you want dance providers to know? So I'm just going to read a couple of quotes. On the left-hand side, one person said, "Having an open attitude to discuss things as they come up. Treat me not as a customer, but as an individual with needs and preferences." And then quote on the right, "If you've met one autistic person, you've met one autistic person. And I guess it's trying to be adaptable and accessible." And I think lots of people were talking about wanting dance providers to know that many autistic people dance and get a lot from it and enjoy it, but that there are challenges. However, there are simple and easy things that dance providers and venues and social settings can do to make dance more inclusive and accessible. And Kelly's going to talk about that in the third presentation a bit more. So it's now my pleasure to introduce film 2, which is about autistic adults' experiences of dance. So this film is for autistic adults to raise awareness about dance as a potentially fun hobby that can support health and well-being. The film is also for link workers to consider recommending dance, either as something that people do at home or in other settings. And also for dance providers to know that there could be autistic dancers in your classes or studios, and to think about how you welcome new autistic dancers into your spaces. And we're now going to show you film 2.
I feel most alive when I'm dancing, like it's exactly what my body was designed to do.
I think it is chasing that freedom, that playfulness, that almost childlike rush of just moving and going and throwing and trying out a move and seeing what that feels like and trying it again. And, oh, that worked. Let's go again.
Dancing makes me feel happy and excitable, and it makes me feel like I can express the emotion that I'm feeling and get it out.
I want a sort of catharsis. I want a physical release of that emotion, a bit more at ease after I've let out a long breath. I can go, okay. I like the heat that is generated in your body and the sensation of blood in your pulling in your fingertips, your skin being alive. Maybe you're sweating and it's a very visceral feeling. It's like seeing color that's brighter and feeling like the air around you is also vivid technicolor.
is an engagement with music that I think is simple and direct, that you can access if you don't think too much. And that's, for me, that's the dilemma. Overthinking will kill the joy for me.
There's a want to look at autism and probably put it in a box and say that all people who experience autism engage with movement in one way. I think for some autistic people, dancing could sound quite scary, but then for some others, I think it can feel like so incredibly natural, like something that just like bubbles out of your body.
Dance can be a coping mechanism. Like, it can be a way of expressing yourself. Like, it doesn't have to be a perfectly choreographed thing. It doesn't have to be this thing that you're really good at. You can just enjoy it and do it because it feels good and you want to do it.
Like, as a kid, I always was in like ballet, tap and jazz, and was like shunned to the back of the stage because I couldn't follow the steps, couldn't keep up, didn't know the sequence, but always felt good while I was dancing. I stumbled upon a somatic dance therapy class about 12 years ago. My friend was like, "Oh, come to this thing, you're going to really love it. Like, there's loads of people like us there." I was like, "Oh, cool." And I got there and then they weren't there and I tried to escape. I tried to leave. I can't ask teacher if I can leave. I just couldn't do it. So I stayed, and I'm really glad I did, because like that first class, although it was like super strange and like seeing people be as free as they were in their bodies, I was like, they're actually onto something. And then I just kept going back.
I was aware of whacking as a style because I've seen it in choreography that I've encountered in classes and also online. I did a little bit more digging and I found out more about the flavor of it, and I was really drawn to it. I felt very enamored by the sass and the flair. It just felt really chewy and delicious. Like when you get it right and you hit every beat, it's the most satisfying feeling.
My standout moments of dancing are being in a club early, it's quiet, the lights are on, the music's playing, there's very few people there, and I've got room. Because I'm nearly 2 meters tall, I am long, and I take up space. I remember going to a nightclub when I was in my teens, and there was no one else on the floor, and literally hurtling. It was an old cinema, so there was a massive dance floor, running and spinning and moving in that space. I knew I wasn't going to hit anybody, I knew I wasn't going to get in anyone's way. Being in that space and just not feeling constrained was wonderful.
Every culture, however disparate and however like geographically or ideologically different, has at some point decided we should move our bodies. And I just think like that's such a beautiful and powerful thing, and that dance can like unite so many people and teach us a lot about loving one another. We can understand each other a lot more through the lens of dance.
Okay, so thanks, Claire, and that was film 2. So now we'll move on to part 3 to discuss how to make dance more accessible. So there are 6 broad areas we can consider when making dance more accessible, and we've also added finding joy, because the aim should always be that dance is enjoyable for people. So whenever possible, it's really helpful to provide information in advance about what to expect. So on the screen, you can see some screenshots of a guide that we did recently for an event. And you can send out this information via email, or some of it might be able to be shared on a website. And importantly, it's really helpful to invite questions at any point. So this can help people to feel safe and comfortable going into new spaces. And considering different spaces, so consider dancing at home, and that might be preferable for some people, and using online classes, which could be either pre-recorded or live. And we also had some suggestions for autistic-only dance spaces, although not everyone wanted this, so there was a bit of a variation in terms of what types of spaces people wanted. And thinking about different options, so considering people's goals and intentions, whether that's to learn a precise routine and have accuracy of movement, or simply to move the body in response to music and have fun in a non-sort of structured way. And providing options where possible, so including different types of music, breaks, adaptations to particular dance steps. Then thinking about the sensory environment, so if possible, giving people information about these aspects and whether anything can be changed, and acknowledging what can't be changed, because sometimes it's not always possible, but it's really helpful to let people know that. And considering venue visits as well, so it might be useful if people can attend a venue in advance of a particular event, whether that's a class or a social event, or for people who are members of staff or social prescribing link workers. Would you be able to attend a venue in advance and share some information about what it's like to the people that you work with? And then thinking about information processing differences, know that some people might need more time to process information or might need information in different formats. And if we're a participant in a dance class, knowing that it's okay if we don't pick things up straight away, it's okay that it might take us a while to pick things up, so trying not to strive for perfection. And then if it's a class with a teacher at the front of the class, maybe considering if the teacher can have their back to the class for some parts and show the steps that way, so that it might be easier for some people to follow, for example, if they're moving in the same direction. And considering other people, so for some, dancing in our own space without other people there might be most helpful. And for social events and classes, having known and trusted people there can be helpful. And modelling acceptance so that all feel welcomed. So that's really important. So acceptance of different body sizes, shapes, danceability, disability aids. And then importantly, finding the joy. So under the right circumstances, dance can be a really fun activity that supports physical and mental health in a range of ways. So in summary, there are some simple changes that can make a big difference. It's really important to invite questions and feedback throughout, and just be transparent about what can and can't be changed. And then remembering as much as possible to find the joy. So now we'll move on to our final film, film 3, and this is about how dance spaces can be adapted to be more accessible and inclusive for autistic adults. And just to say, if you notice any sort of judgeriness with the films, it might be because we're sharing these over the internet, so there could be some internet issues. So we will have these on the project website, and hopefully you'll be able to see them a bit smoother if you are having any internet issues. But this particular film is for autistic adults to support self-advocacy for adjustments, and link workers and dance providers to increase awareness about simple adjustments that could be made so that dance spaces are more accessible and inclusive. But as mentioned earlier, some of the topics in this film could be relevant for other primary care staff and other types of professionals and other contexts and settings as well.
Presumably as a dance provider or as a dance educator, you have a passion and a love for that form. How do you want that person to feel in that environment, but they might have a different way of getting there? What's their needs? Okay, well now there's a challenge for you to adapt the situation so that maybe they can come in and experience what you experience when you're dancing in your space.
When I first started doing dancing, I wasn't diagnosed. So my first experience with dance was kind of like, oh, this is how it is, and I don't really question it because I thought that's how it was. And then it was only until like dance syndrome that I kind of then was like, oh, how inclusive dance works like differently than. And then from that, now I can see the difference between kind of like what a space is before and then after.
I just want to know what to expect. I think in a lot of spaces, whether that's dance ones or otherwise, there are just rules that nobody tells you about. And somehow people walk in feeling like they've gotten a rule book that you've never read before. And until I can write my own rule book in my head, walking into those new spaces will always make me feel a bit uneasy.
I know that the classes that I've been to in the past, it's really nerve-wracking to walk in, especially when you don't know anybody and you don't know whether you're going to get on with them. And then you've got like the lights and the sounds and everything. Like if you can take a few of those things out and have a bit more control in the situation, stuff like that makes it easier to attend so that you can enjoy it equally.
For me, it's improved my confidence, and it's especially as well about say specifically with dance syndrome. About say it made me more comfortable with the fact about my autism, not having to hide a side of me that like I feel like everyone will judge me because they see me twitching my hand or about say my lack of eye contact.
Ask for feedback, get to know them and what their needs are. You know, ask on a regular basis. Just making yourself available for more suggestion is like, that's how you do it. And I don't think there's like an end point to that. Like, oh, right, we've done all the recommendations, now we're finished. Like making that process of like self-reflection as well, so that the space is growing with the people and the changing needs.
Sometimes things can just be demonstrated really well. I think that being told one thing, but then understanding just by verbal isn't like, for me anyway, it's not usually enough. I need to like visually see it to then be like, right, no, that is the right direction. Whereas if I'm just told, there's a chance my brain could then go, oh, I don't know which direction I'm going. So then it can kind of glitch a little bit. Also kind of allowing kind of just the option of adaptions is nice. I'm not feeling like, oh, I'm doing it wrong. Like, and that's like a big relief off me and less pressure that like I have to hit everything like 100%.
Just some sense of being able to prepare yourself for what will happen in the space. And understanding, I think, also of like just the circumstances of the space. Is it warm? Is it cold? What is the lighting like? Are there bathrooms? Is there water? How many bodies will I encounter in this space? Is this a space we can make sound? Is this a space we can cheer each other on? Is this a space where we can make mistakes, we can adapt the material, we can put a spin on things? Knowing that information allows you to come into the space just a little more settled, and that allows you to also sink into the dancing a little bit more rather than feeling like you're on edge and having to manage a lot of aspects of the space that to other people might feel like second nature, but to you might feel like something you're having to very consciously do.
Someone who about to say doesn't like kind of hasn't given that opportunity, doesn't understand they can have it. Especially with dance, about to say dance is like immediately people will think of the professional, like 5, 6, 7, 8 choreography on stage, like that type of stuff. But then in truth, about say even just like dancing like small, about say still massive for people. And I think like even if it is just a little bit of movement, that can go a long way. And I think like definitely about say it's something I definitely would say for me it was a massive benefit. It saved my life to doing dance, and I think it can definitely save some other people.
Okay, so the next steps for the project are we're continuing to analyse the data from all of the studies, and we'll share the films and the written materials on the project website. So the link is here, and the QR code in the top right corner is from the project website. So once we've got everything ready, they'll be available on the website. We've just secured a small amount of funding to produce a longer film. So we'll be working with the filmmaker Sophie Broadgate again and our autistic project advisors to create that. And we're hoping that that might include an autistic person who's non-speaking and to share their experience of dance. And yeah, we'd love it if you visit the project website, have a look what's on there, and if you can provide feedback via the Padlet about any of the research findings that you've heard today, and whether they resonate with you or not, and any feedback about the films, we would really love it if you could share that on the Padlet. And if you want to be notified about when the resources are available, when we have updates on the project, please email us. My email address is on the bottom of the screen. And we'd just like to thank you for joining us today and say a big thank you to everybody who was involved in the project. The organisations that supported us, Down Syndrome, Company Chameleon, all of the project advisors and professional stakeholders, and everybody who took part in the films, and Sophie Broadgate. So thanks everybody, and I think we can move into the question and answer section now.